Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and it's time to rank the top 10 best characters for each of the top 10 most popular CTPs, minus the CTP of a veteran. Now, before we get into the list, a couple quick PSAs. One, this is just my opinion, so you're more than welcome to give your hard-fought, hard-earned CTPs to any character you want. Two, I want to differentiate for a couple of CTPs in particular, like the Authority, like the Destruction, that you and especially the Greed, that you genuinely and generally don't want to equip them unless they are reforged. You can get away with it in some instances, but more likely than not you want to reforge them, especially Destruction and Greed. You want to reforge them to at least Mighty before you equip them. And for my lists, for the Greed and for the Destruction, they are not considered at all as regular CTPs, because the Greed as a regular CTP and the Destruction as regular CTPs just do not have enough value. It's only really when they're reforged that they have value. So when I'm on those lists, I'm talking about the Mighty and Brilliant versions of those two CTPs, not the regular versions. I still see people asking, oh, I got a CTP of Destruction, who should I give it to? No one. Wait till you have a second one, smash them together. The value is well above double than just having the two singular CTPs. Also consider the fact that some CTPs, despite their value, aren't available for reforging yet, like Rage. That's still a huge thing in the community. We'll get it one day, but not yet. Okay, so starting us off, we're going to jump into Insight. This CTP, like a few at the beginning of the video, has not changed. We've gotten a couple of new support types, or new support types have come out with upgraded uniforms like Agent Venom and She-Hulk. However, they've also transcended the only support category, and you can actually use them as standalone characters. You can use She-Hulk in ABX and World Boss. You can use Agent Venom in PvP and in Alliance Conquest. So I hesitate to put them on this list. Plus, you can really make that distinction for yourself. I don't necessarily think there's a huge difference between giving, you know, Cyclops and Mystique, who are 9 and 10th on this list, a CTP of Insight, versus giving it to Agent Venom. Agent Venom actually has less value as a support than they do. As for She-Hulk, one of the best leaderships in the game, yes, but she appears on this list in another CTP category, so that's what I want to highlight her for. Generally speaking, I try not to put one character on more than 2 of the lists. That's not to say that there aren't some characters that dominate the game, but I just want to give more characters the spotlight rather than just telling everyone that the same 10 characters over and over again. So yeah, Insight list has not really changed at all, but that's not really surprising. Patience and Transcendence, the next one here, not the egg, but yeah, it doesn't really matter. This one also has not changed, and for every character past Mr. Sinister and Adam Warlock, you're not really gonna, you know, you're just slapping this CTP on them if you just want to push higher in Shadowland and things like that. Generally speaking, these CTPs are near worthless. However, specifically for Adam and Mr. Sinister, if you want it to be quirky, if you want it to get a little weird with it, you can explore the option of either a Mighty or a Brilliant version, because it does have additional pierce damage, does have a lot of value, but specifically it combines decently with Mr. Sinister and Adam Warlock, because they already have guard break immunity. There are a couple of other characters that have guard break immunity now, like She-Hulk, but they're not built for PvP. Whereas Adam Warlock and Mr. Sinister, with healing and iframe ignore and stuff like that, they are built for PvP. But again, these are discount CTPs. This is not your best option for these characters necessarily. This is just the best character for this option. We gotta make the difference here, right? If you really want to push Adam and Mr. Sinister into PvP, then you want to go with Regen or Authority, or maybe Greed, maybe Destruction, probably not, but yeah, so just keep that in mind. Otherwise, this list has not changed, and it's frankly probably not hopefully not going to change, because these CTPs are very weak, the Patience and Transcendence, and these characters are, you know, much too valuable. As far as the Greed goes, we're gonna again jump right into Mighty and Brilliant Greed. The list remains largely unchanged. I added in Black Widow there at the bottom. I haven't seen very much talk about her, but I do know that there are some high-level players using her with a Greed for PvP, particularly Alliance Conquest. I think most players are focusing on Black Widow as the best speed type only at tier 4, and I will be making that distinction when I talk about the individual characters. Hey, they're on this list at tier 4, or they can be on this list at level 80. In Black Widow's case, she cannot be on this list at level 80. She's not good enough for PvP at level 80, in my opinion, unless you're talking like, you know, just mid-level Alliance Conquest stuff. Otherwise, she needs to be tier 4. The good thing about the CTP of Greed, if you're having trouble with specific opponents and specific types of damage, it negates Reflect. So that's what the ambush effect does. It also ignores part of the enemy's damage decrease. So if you're losing to a lot of Thanos's or other characters that have a lot of damage reduction with their native damage reduction and with, you know, Colossus support, maybe a CTP of Authority, a Brilliant, whatever, ambush effect negates that. So it's really good for just a quick burst down of damage, but generally speaking, it also means that your character is going to be a lot more fragile. So it's sort of like a high risk, high reward type situation, and you can click on the ambush effect and you can read what it does, and it gives you immunity to that reflect effect. But yeah, that's the list for Greed. Moving on to the egg. Again, like Patience and Transcendence, this list has not changed. The only thing I changed was the icon for She-Hulk. And again, I wouldn't recommend giving She-Hulk a refinement, but she does have guard break immunity, and you could, I guess, on a very discount PvP build, you could give her the egg and she could function a lot better than most characters can, because most characters can't use this CTP since they lack guard break immunity. And that's one of the reasons that this CTP gets set apart and is much worse in value than the CTP of Regeneration or Authority for PvP, because those CTPs have guard break and this one does not have guard break immunity. But yeah, otherwise the list is exactly the same. This is a very low value CTP. You probably should not be equipping it. You should be saving it for when it gets reforging in the future, or to just use as fodder when you are trying to reforge another CTP and trying to get a Brilliant or a Mighty. Moving on to now the more popular PvE CTPs, Judgment. Now, Judgment and Energy have seen a lot of their value lost recently with Alliance Battle Legend and Dormammu GBR making Rage king again. So this list has not changed dramatically, although we have gotten new characters for it, because Rage is also a really good option for them. So you see Storm there, you see Thor there. Both there assuming tier 4, and although they can be very good with the Judgment, you're like, Alex, Thor tier 4 is way better than Mephisto. That's true, but Rage is better for Thor in that case, right? Especially if you're going to use him in Alliance Battle Legend, World Boss Legend, very high stages, etc. Dormammu, etc., etc., etc. Even farming and stuff like that. So yeah, Blue Dragon is really the only one that makes the most value out of Judgment. So that's why I put her number 1 on the list. But again, it assumes that she's at least level 80, if not tier 4. Same thing goes for Storm. And again, they're lower on the list, not because they're worse in this case, but because Rage is just so much better. We also feature the new addition of Iceman, who's honestly just pretty decent overall. He's an alternative if you don't have Storm, etc. for today's Alliance Battle Legend Mutant Hero Day, which the devs have been focusing more on mutants lately. So it's interesting to see it evolve. But hopefully it won't just end with Storm and Iceman. We'll get more mutants getting upgrades. So yeah, this is the ranking, and these are the top 10 characters for Judgment. Hasn't changed too much, but you'll see why a little bit later. Then we have Authority here. Again, we're probably assuming you have at least a Mighty. This list hasn't changed much either, but we do still see the introduction of a couple of tier 4s. Again, for Black Widow and Blue Dragon, I'm assuming they are tier 4. If they're not tier 4, and you build them for PvP, you're probably not going to have a good time. I also don't necessarily think this is their best CTP for PvP, but I wanted to put them on this list just because otherwise this list would not have changed at all. And I do want to recognize that they do have some value in PvP. Again, not as much as the top 3, top 4. Wolverine is kind of hit and miss depending on your card setup, but for Blue Dragon and Black Widow, the entry to, you know, the expectations and the bar of entry is very, very high. So yeah, if they're not tier 4, I wouldn't even consider them for this list. But otherwise, the steal effect is still one of the best effects for 1v1 PvP timeline battle situations. Moving on to Destruction, here's where we start to see a little bit more of a shift, a little bit more of a shakeup. So Blue Dragon and Sunbird both make their debut on this list after being knocked off a few months ago or 6 months ago or whatever. And the reason for that being when they die and they revive in PvP, the Mighty CTP triggers, their 6 skill triggers, and they penetrate and they just wipe you out, right? So it's a very nice combo, and it synergizes super well with the CTP of Destruction. So that's why they're both on this list. Blue Dragon obviously way higher because she's way better than Sunbird. Sunbird is only here because you can use him and pair him with Blue Dragon tier 4, and he gives that revive. If you don't have Blue Dragon, Sunbird is not even considered for this list, and he's only considered if you're using her for PvP Blue Dragon, and presumably, hopefully, at tier 4 as well. Also, you're going to see Iron Man on this list. This is an interesting one I wanted to highlight. If you want to use Iron Man for PvP, or if you're sick of Iron Man getting guard broken, this is an alternative option to a CTP of Rage. It's going to be a bit controversial, but it's true, and he can still function very well because he is pretty proc friendly. Not super proc friendly, but good enough in most instances. Again, not suggesting this is his best CTP. That's why I put him at the bottom of this list, but giving people some alternatives because not everyone has 10, 15 rages lying around. Okay, moving on to the CTP of Energy top 10 list. Here we see a huge shift, namely because a lot of the characters that were at the top of this list have been replaced by other characters in game modes that they were dominating, and also because the energy has lost value with Dormammu GBR and now with Alliance Battle Legend coming out. So we still see Jade and Moon Knight at the top, but then Kamala and Black Widow come roaring in. You know, Kamala is just amazing with the CTP of Energy, maybe the best value character in the game with a CTP of Energy at tier 3. She just shreds content, very much like Jane, just a little bit easier to play and a little bit tankier, which is always a great thing. Also, a much more difficult typing to get good characters for, right? The universal typing is quite stacked compared to the speed typing, especially when you go to very high stages. And then Black Widow, of course, pretty good at level 80 with an energy, about as good as Kamala, but more cost invested. But then she gets very good at tier 4 with an energy, and she can be played very proc friendly, so I have to respect that. The tier 3 skill's a little annoying to use from time to time, but yeah, it works. And then Scream, I genuinely think she's just a better version of Sharon Rogers, a little bit less tanky, but also has more damage, and again, also a rarer typing, being a combat hero slash villain versus a blast hero, which we have like a bazillion of. So yeah, we lost Black Dwarf from this list. We lost a couple of other characters from this list. But yeah, pretty big shakeup in energy. Not as big as the one you're going to see very soon, but yeah, that's it for energy. Moving on to Regen. This is another pretty big shift because Hulk takes the cake at number 1. Easy clap there. I also put Black Widow 3rd because if you're going to go all the way tier 4 for PvP to try to counter Adam Warlock, she needs as much HP as possible. So again, if she's tier 4, I think she's better than Spider-Man for PvP if that's what you want to do. If she's not tier 4, she's barely on this list. She's like 9th or 10th in front of Molecule Man or Silver Surfer. It's not even close, so keep that in mind. The other new addition here is Juggernaut at number 7. I think Juggernaut's kind of underrated. He's got a really good kit, and he also has the amazing Gilgamesh artifact. So if you have his uniform and you got his artifact, consider building him for PvP. He's actually just a stronger version of Gilgamesh. Not as much synergy with team bonuses and stuff with Cersei, obviously, because he's not an Eternal, but a very, very strong sort of second tier PvP character along the likes of like Luke Cage, Silver Surfer, etc. And then we come to the final list, Rage CTP, the best CTP that's never been reforgeable. This one sees the most change with almost the entire top 10 list being shuffled around and new characters being introduced. So from the top, we still have Thor and Iron Man leading the charge. I dropped Loki down a bunch because of ABL's introduction. ABL's introduction means that while Loki is still very valuable, he's literally only holding on to that. That's all he has left, because Thor beats him for farming, and then you have other characters doing everything else, basically. So it's not that he's bad, it's just that there are better and more valuable characters now. Venom cannot really be played with any other CTP, and he's one of the best combat tier 4s, so he had to make this list. Kamala showing huge value as a tier 3. You can give her a rage for an even easier rotation. You can use her in ABL to get scores that are better than tier 3 level 80 Black Widow. Her value is just, you know, out of this world. Titania, amazing with a rage for GBR and ABX. Same thing goes for She-Hulk, and you have the duality of having the leadership as well. And then Doctor Strange, Shang-Chi, and Scarlet Witch have been on these lists forever, and it's sort of obvious why they're here. High value, hard to play without it. Yeah, there's very few characters that do it like them. So that's the list. I know I went through it pretty quickly, but hopefully that gives you guys some advice here. I wanted to do this just before the CTP Unequip event. It's going to be happening in about 24 hours. So refer to this video when you are making your decisions on where to move CTPs around. Good luck. Thank you so much for watching. Smash the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.